good evening from Toastmasters Unplugged and happy World Poetry Day. We are delighted to be doing this episode and joined by some of our poets in residence or people who've been poets in residence over the last few years. So here we have Prince. Prince was Poet in Residence 2024-2025, so he's actually the current one. And when Prince is not busy writing poetry and being creative, he is in the pharmaceutical business. And also we have Mike Keenan, who is the outgoing Poet in Residence. That was last year. And when Mike is not busy writing poetry, he is a nursing manager in mental health and has a great love and interest in music therapy. So welcome to the both of you. We also, unfortunately, we had Anya O'Neill, who was the very first Poet in Residence. She is competing in a contest, but we did catch up with her during the week, and we'll be sharing that in just a few minutes. And unfortunately, Philip Campani is unable to join us tonight, but we're delighted to be in great company. And I'm sure we have some wonderful people watching. You're very welcome to put up where you're calling from, and we'll give you a shout out. And I see that Elizabeth Jordan is excited to be here. Elizabeth, we're excited to have you. So what I'm going to do, gentlemen, is we're going to do a quick fire round. Now, quick fire round is a hard one for Toastmasters because we love to speak. So I'm going to challenge you to give me a yes, no, or a one-word answer to the following, and I'm going to alternate it between you. So, Mike, one word to describe poetry.
Ice-breaking.
Prince, rhyme or free verse?
Rhyme.
Hey. Mike, back to you. What's harder, starting the poem or finishing the poem?
Finishing.
Hey. And over to you, Prince. Spoken word or written poetry?
Spoken word.
Mike, page or stage? Where does poetry truly live?
Somewhere in between. Page.
Page. And finally, Prince, pen or paper or typing it out?
Pen and paper.
Okay, excellent. Yes, I just imagine all these poets from years ago, pen and paper. It seems odd, typing it out on the keyboard. Brilliant. So now, gentlemen, I'm going to get Mr. Green to whip you off to the green room, and we're going to have an individual session with each of you. Now, the first person we're going to be chatting with is somebody who couldn't be here tonight. So we're going back to the past, and we caught up with her during the week to ask her what it is like being a poet and about her time as a poet in residence. So Brian, who's helping us, very kindly helping us out in the back in our studio, could you please share the video when we caught up with Anya earlier? Anya, it's lovely to sit down with you to talk all about poetry on World Poets Day.
Thanks,
so Anya, I'd love to get started. I'm going to go straight in, and just to tell our audience, Anya recently wrote an article about how poetry can help in the workplace, all to do with building that connection. So Anya, tell us a little bit about the piece, where it got published and all about it.
Right, yeah, I'd be delighted to, Olga. The piece got published in the Yorkshire Post the other day, and also in another magazine, kind of a coffee house magazine. And it's about how poetry, as you said, can be used as inspiration in the workplace. How it was an idea I had because we had a newsletter in our workplace, and they were asking for contributions from the staff, so I started putting in poems and stories. And then somebody was leaving on our team, and I suggested I sing a song, but they said, oh, no, please don't, because I'm not a great singer. But they said, but you could write a poem. So I wrote a poem, and it went down really, really well at their leaving do. And they both got it framed, and I handed it to them in a scroll with red ribbon around it. So as the years went on, then there was lots of occasions in the workplace, leaving dues, weddings, birthdays, all sorts. So I was asked to write poetry for different people and to put together something suitable for them. And it always went down well. It's like a bespoke present from the team to the person. And I think it makes a big difference because a lot of the time you're just given a card in a workplace or, you know, with a voucher, say, and it's a bit impersonal, to be honest. But this is a very personal touch. And what I used to do was get the whole team to give either a word or a verse if they felt like it, or a line, and I would collate them all together and put them in a poem, and then we would print it off, and someone else suggest about wrapping it up in a scroll and putting red ribbon around it and that. So we did all that, and it just took off from there. And, you know, it was just a nice thing to do to help people feel appreciated and, you know, valued on the team.
I think it's so impactful, because you're right, those cards you get, it's almost reading like LinkedIn posts. I've heard it all before, but something like that's so different. And when you're writing, I presume it's from the soul, and as you say, you're getting other people's contributions. So
Yes. So the sentiment behind a poem is always very important, and the sentiment would always be nice, in terms of if someone is leaving, you know, you would always make a reflection on their character, their good points, you know, the impact they had on the team, etc. Like, so, you know, it would go down very well generally, like.
Yeah, so nobody would want to annoy you, because you might write a mean poem. Yeah, especially years ago, the poets were held in great reverence, and everybody was just so afraid of them in case they wrote some bad words about them.
Yes.
So. Yeah. Brilliant. That's phenomenal. It might take off on you. You'd have to leave the job and then do this for loads of years.
I actually have left that job since, but so I'm focusing on I'm doing a master's in creative writing at the moment, so I'm just finishing that at the moment, and then probably back to the workplace after that, some shape or form. So
you never know, Anya. The world's your oyster with your talents. Now I have a question for you, going back to the very where it all started. When was the moment you realized that you were a poet?
I think it was when I wrote a poem called The Glimmer. It was a poem that I loved writing. It came out, and it just resonated with a lot of people. I put it out on World Mental Health Day, I think it was 2022 or maybe before it, and it had a great reaction. I just put it out on my Facebook page, and it had a great reaction, and it helped lift the spirits and helped just define what hope is and how encouragement can help people move along in their lives. So I was delighted with that, and I thought to myself, well, I'm a poet, and my late mother always used to say, you're the poet and the poems just come out of you. And like, you know, so because I did a lot of courses in poetry, and I would always tend to revert back to the way I wrote them myself, my own style. And, you know, she would just say, look, on you're a poet, and that's it. You know, you have it in you, and, you know, you've written enough poems now to warrant being called a poet, even though sometimes it's hard to accept that, because you're like, well, you know, I don't have a book, or I don't have this or that. So, you know, there's always that self-doubt in the head of any writer. I think really a lot of writers have that. So.
You're right. That seems to be the plague of many, many talented people, particularly the creative, would have that whole, you know, imposter syndrome. I know it goes for everybody, but specifically creative people, they feel they haven't arrived when they have.
Yeah.
Now, Anya, I've got a question for you. This is an interesting one. So, poet in residence, that's what all the 4 people on our panel this evening were, all poets in residence. And to me, I just imagine sort of castle and this wonderful poet in there, and everybody's kowtowing that she writes good words, or he writes good words for them, that they're a really important person, a lot pivots around them. So tell us exactly how did poet in residence work for Toastmasters?
Well, I was actually lucky enough to be the first poet in residence that Toastmasters had. So I was very, very honoured to be chosen, and I went through a selection process, and then I became the poet, and we had to come up with a framework. It was Elizabeth Jordan that came up with the framework for the poet in residence, where we would, you know, I was tasked with writing a poem a month during the pandemic on the theme of dream, believe, achieve. And then also I ran a number of workshops. I think it was 3 or 4 in total. I held a poetry competition in one of those workshops. There was a good bit to it, and then on different occasions, I was asked to write poems for each of those occasions. Like I know Ted Corcoran had a series that was run on the Sunday evening webinars, and on the history of Toastmasters. And I know some of the clubs had anniversaries, so I would write a poem for them. There was different occasions like the Christmas party for District 71, you know, and it just became a busy role, but a very worthwhile role, because it added so much to each event and occasion. And like, poetry is quite underrated at the moment, I think, and having a poet in residence really ups the game of language and creativity generally within the Toastmasters community and within the ordinary community as well.
Yeah, and Anya, I've questioned something you were saying there. You were commissioned to write poems for various occasions. Did you ever feel they were messing with your creativity? Because I imagine a poet, they kind of have to, they can't do it on demand. It's something that comes from within. So how did that work?
Yes, the best advice I can give to a poet who is asked to write poems is to just start it first and see what comes out. It is a bit hard to write on demand, that's true, but once you get used to it, you become agile and able to move your words around, find the right word for each occasion. You know, obviously if it's Christmas, you're going to have a lot of different vocabulary than say it's a birthday, you know, so, you know, there is ways you can do it, and you'd be surprised when you start trying to do something, how well you can perform. Now, if you want to write like really high-end stuff, you know, it can be difficult, but the poems that resonate with people tend to be the most simple ones, or just the most straightforward ones, where people understand the sentiment, first of all, that you're trying to get across. And also, if you've thought long enough and hard enough about the words you're using, and are they the correct word? Am I showing rather than telling? That's also very important in poetry and writing in general. So, you know, you do get used to it, and you become good at it then as time goes on.
Excellent. And we're running out of time, Anya, but my last question is, if you could collaborate with any poet, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
The poet he's dead now is Seamus Heaney, that I would like to collaborate with. He wrote a beautiful poem when all the others were away at Mass for his mother, and I wrote one called When All the Others Were Away at School for my mother, and it's on the same lines as his poem. So I love his work. I do have a living poet as well that I enjoy, called Jan Brereton, and she has great poems, very simple but effective poems, and I would like to collaborate with her as well. So there's two of them. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Collaborations are always the most wonderful. You've got hybrid type poems. But listen, thank you, Anya. We're going to return to the studio in the future, but thank you for joining me. And listen, best of luck with everything. And just to let our audience know, Anya is actually writing a book, and maybe we can connect again and hear more about it. So best of luck with everything, Anya. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks very much, Olga. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care. Well, now we're back into the future, so I'm going to ask Brian. He's removed the video. And now I would like to call up my next guest, who's live in the studio tonight, and that is going to be Prince Aqua. So, Prince, you are very welcome.
Yes, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Olga, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that interview from Anya.
I know, it's exciting. Now, I'm going to ask you similar questions, but before that, I have a question for you based on World Poetry Day, and I'm going to ask some questions on what Anya chatted about. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what did you do today to celebrate World Poetry Day?
So to celebrate, I guess I didn't do anything out of the usual, but I wrote some music, I wrote some poetry, and I normally write poetry on days when I'm not at work. So I think it was just like a another day just to reflect and have a think about why I like poetry and what it means for me and how it's helped me over the past few years since I've really started doing it more often. So yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing. I love to read poetry. I couldn't write it, but it's one of those poems that resonate with you, makes you sit up. So it's lovely to be able to go and write it. So wow, amazing. Now my next question is something that Anya said, and it's something that I asked her. It's, as a poet in residence, you're commissioned to write these poems. And I know it's something, I mean, I can't imagine Emily Dickinson being told, okay, we need a poem at somebody's birthday, in the thing. It's kind of like, no, it comes from a dark place or a good place. How did you manage, say maybe you have loads of this creative stuff inside and someone says, look, it's John's birthday. Could you write us a nice little poem for that? How does that align with your way of thinking about your creative process?
Yeah. Something that Anya said that like I actually really enjoy. She said the poems just come out of you, and I can't agree more. And she also said something about just starting. Sometimes you have to just start, give yourself some protected time, just start and just see what comes out. Because sometimes it just comes out of you without you realizing. Like I feel like sometimes as poets or as a creator, you are just the vessel that the inspiration comes through. So all you need to do is just start, open the tap, and just give yourself some time. What I like to do is I set some time aside, make sure that I'm not distracted, it's protected, and then I just start, and then sometimes it just flows, and that's how I found the inspiration comes to you. So I normally don't. Initially, I was thinking, oh my God, how am I going to meet all these deadlines? But as soon as you start and as soon as you give yourself some time, it just appears, and it's hard to explain sometimes. But that's the process for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that must be the gift, Prince. Some people have and some people don't. And the other thing, would it be, like you say, it flows and it comes out, would there be a major editing process, or is it pretty much it's flown, it's done, here you go?
Most of the time there's minimal editing. The editing comes from when I am like, once I've written it and it's done, the editing comes from when I'm like repeating it or saying it or performing it. Sometimes when you say it back to yourself, there's elements where you change like some slight words. That's how I find, so that it connects more. And when I say connect more, it's all a feeling. So sometimes when I'm saying something back, I might just remove a word or add a word or change the phrasing just so that it sits better with the feeling that I have. And that's most of the time how the editing goes. But I would say 80 to 90% of the poems I write, I don't usually edit a lot afterwards. I usually just the finished article, and then whilst I'm performing it and repeating it to myself, then I have some few tweaks here and there.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go back and ask a similar question to what I asked Anya. Was there a moment when you realized you were a poet? Was it when you were younger, like as a kid in school, or was it sort of a process you came across later in life?
That's a great question. It's funny because I still don't think of myself as a poet. I don't know how to. It's a strange one. Like I think you mentioned it, Anya mentioned it. I don't feel like I've arrived. I feel like it's still a work in progress. But I would say maybe the moment when I thought to myself, yeah, I could do this was during my second or third year at university. I created a song with some lyrics in it, and I performed it to my brother. And he said to me, "Why don't you try doing spoken word?" And that was, I think, the first moment where I thought to myself, okay, like I could actually do it in a spoken word format. And I find sometimes the words have more power when it's like in a spoken word rather than in a song, because you can give the audience time for it to sit. So I think if I could pick a moment, maybe that was a moment that when I reflect on, I was like, okay, spoken word might be, and poetry might be an avenue that I may do well in. And yeah, and then the rest is history and still unfolding. Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing. And what sort of style is poetry going to now? You mentioned like the spoken word and how the delivery. I mean, what do you think about rap being, an evolution process for poetry? What's your feelings about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like rap music is one of my favorite genres, rap and R&B, and it's all when you listen to it, it is all poetry at the end of the day. It is all expression through words, and it's just over different background music. So is, all genres of music. I find poetry in every type of music I listen to. And I see poetry as like an expression sometimes with some structures, but it doesn't even have to have structure. There's a poet I really like. I forgot his name, but his poem that never rhymes, which was very unique for me because my poems always rhyme. So when I'm listening to him, like, it actually opened my mind to what poetry is, and in terms of its evolution, I think there's so many different forms, and as long as it connects and it has, it makes you feel something, and I think, it's poetry to me. So that's how I kind of see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very individual. It's that resonance, when you see something and you read it. And you say that you think the spoken word is better than reading. So, with a poem, you think it's a better delivery is the spoken word as opposed to have a read of my poem.
Yeah, absolutely. The spoken word always, I feel like you can convey, when you got the spoken word, you can convey an emotion. And that's why I like, when I do my speeches at Toastmasters as well, I try not to read, because I feel like sometimes when you do read, you can get lost in the words and lost in the point you're trying to deliver. But a lot of the time, sometimes it's just about the emotion. Like, have you ever heard a song, you have no idea what they're saying, it makes you feel something? And I think that is why spoken word is my preferred method, because you can feel, you definitely feel it, the emotion. You can focus on delivering that emotion rather than getting the words right. I think that's very important.
Yeah, no, good point. Really interesting. Now, nice question for you. A poet that you would like to collaborate with, it could be living or deceased. Is there anyone that leaps to mind?
Yeah, so I think Benjamin Zephaniah is somebody that I've kind of watched a lot, and I just like the way he delivers his poems. He is dead at the moment, which is very, very sad for the poetic community. Poetic community. But he's someone whose poetry I really enjoy. The way he delivers it, the way he touches on very deep topics, but does it with that flow and that melody. And then in terms of another poet I really enjoy is J. Cole, more of a rapper because of obviously the music background. But yeah, his stuff is always poetic. And every time I listen to his music, it always makes me feel something, makes me reflect. And I think that's what I really like about him. So if one day I could collaborate on a song or a piece of art with J. Cole, I will then call myself a poet.
Okay, well, if J. Cole is listening, Prince, we can give you his details and we can get you to collaborate together. So my last question, Prince, is just about your time as a poet in residence. What was the highlight of the year for you?
Ooh, the highlight of the year, the 100-year speech, poem that I wrote, and getting to perform that, record it, do it at the 100-year online event as well. That was definitely my highlight. I think that poem was very special because it probably took me the longest to write, but then it also was one of those poems that was such an important moment, and I'm so happy that I was able to craft something for such a key moment in the Toastmasters history. And Toastmasters means a lot to me. It means so much to me. It's one of the best communities/families I've ever joined. So to be able to craft something for that moment was very special. So that's my highlight, pretty much the highlight of the whole year. One of my highlights of the whole year, in all honesty. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
That's a great highlight. And yes, I can attest to being Toastmasters is such a wonderful organization. You go through life and, you're having a tough day, and Toastmasters is that evening and a smile comes on your face and out the door you go and into that magical world. So Prince, that's our one-to-one finished. And I'm going to ask Brian to shift you off the stage and bring in Mike. Mike, how are you?
Hi, Olga. How are you doing?
Good. I'm going to start just on the theme of what Prince was chatting there. He felt that the spoken word is the most powerful part of poetry. Do you agree with him?
I'm not inclined to split up written and spoken in that way, because it's like a creation. It's like that would be like trying to split up the child that's born from the the child in the womb. You can't really split them up, but one does have to come before the other, which was why I said the written is probably more important, because the other wouldn't exist without the written. But when it is written and it is performed, it's almost like you're feeding off that written part all the time, and you're probably modifying it. But it is written with the pen. But it's that part of when you start speaking it, that's when you become really empowered, and that's when you become really influential in the world to make a difference to a person. I work in the field of mental health, and I find that the poems make a difference. Just gathering people, not even just talking about my own poems, but just talking about poetry as a vehicle of being inspired, or being healed, or just being touched, moved, inspired. It's the written and shared part that where it becomes. It's almost like the Bible says, when the word becomes flesh and lives among us.
Yeah. So do you think poetry is it's a healing, and almost a healing tool for some people?
Absolutely. I wrote a poem recently about it for a person in hospital, and every time she sees me now, she laughs, and I mean, laugh is one of the signs of healing. But I wrote about her in a comical way, maybe, but she loved it, and it just talked about her tender heart and her wild ways as well. It was a real sort of revelation for me, because with a sort of a knowledge of psychology, you begin to get an insight into maybe Jungian psychology, where when you break up the anima and the animus, the masculine and feminine dimensions of the person, and then you see, when you're writing for a female, it's almost writing, because poetry holds up a mirror and it reflects back into the female of myself, and I'm looking at the wild features of my own femininity, or my own tenderness, or my own heart, and that sort of empowers me to continue to be maybe sometimes to wear my heart on my sleeve for people who suffer mental health, and that sort of generates more creativity and generates more poetry and songs and anything else creative. I haven't turned to art yet now, but life is short yet. I'm only in my 60s.
Yeah, you've loads of time to get that extra edge. You can have music, poetry, everything. Now, Mike, you were poet in residence for the last year, so you finished in 2024. So did you enjoy your year, and maybe just share some of the highlights?
Yeah, God, it's one of the greatest titles that was ever conferred on me. I think, to be called poet in residence, it was almost like just an honor, an amazing honor to be chosen, and that in itself gave me the sort of energy and the momentum to start writing poetry. And I found, as I went along, there was never another year like it for writing poetry for me, because I just sort of became focused and really intentional about writing poetry. And I started, because I always have it that I don't go in and sort of start writing. I usually spend about an hour in silence before, because like Prince, I really believe that, and Anya, that the poetry comes through you. You just give it time. You just allow it. Just hold the pen in a way, like, in that sense, and feeling the honor of being the poet in residence became a real sort of driver for me. And I wrote poems that I have to say I never wrote before. Well, obviously I didn't write them before, but I wrote them about people that touched me in different ways and new ways, that made me feel honored, but also humble. And I started relating to people. There was one guy in particular I wrote a poem about, and he was just a really special guy. And all he used to do when I was young, when I was a child going to school, was he used to sweep the street. But the one thing I remember about him was that hail, snow, rain, wind, snow, whatever the weather, he always had a smile on his face. And that came back to me just in my year as a poet in residence. And I was so glad I got to really write a poem and get into the whole thing of what it means to be famous. Because at the time, Johnny Sexton was people were saying, oh, he should be a national treasure. And my friend's name was, when I was a child, was Johnny Rigney. So I wrote a poem about the national treasure. And this guy, Johnny Sexton, will make you smile on a Saturday afternoon with his rugby skills. But Johnny Rigney will make you smile on a Monday morning, which is another level.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lovely sentiment to have that. And yeah, it's sometimes people from just, it's just that smile and just that connection. And it just resonates with you. As you said, he was somebody who crossed your path when you were a youngster, and then he then has inspired you and, through your creative process and your poetry. So that's fantastic. I'm going to ask you then about a poet that either living or dead that you would love to collaborate with, or that you really admire their poetry.
Yeah, again, well, to me, there's nobody like Patrick Kavanagh. Patrick Kavanagh, just a sort of such an amazing way to describe the ordinary everyday. Like in his Canal Bank Walk, he says, wallow in the habitual, the banal. These sort of concepts, an amazing facility with words. Even though he lived most of his life on a stony farm in Monaghan, he was so able to describe it. And sometimes you do find that it's the hardship in the background that often dictates the depth of your poetry, I think.
Yeah.
Another guy, I came across his poetry, and he wrote the most amazing 4-line poem I think that was ever written. He's another Irish guy, Seamus O'Neill. I don't know if you ever heard the poem. I might just say it because it is he wrote it in Irish, and Irish is a very colourful language, and it just describes things maybe in a different way than English does sometimes. And the name of the poem was Suv Millish, which is Irish, which means sweet jam. And he wrote it in Irish first, and then it was translated. He said, there was jam on the door handle, and I resisted the urge to get angry or upset, because I thought of the day when the door handle would be clean and the little hand would be gone.
So simple but yet so powerful, and that would be a sentiment felt by a lot of people. Really clever. Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, and there's so many depths to that. Like, in terms of we stop ourselves acting like children a lot of the time. We become very civilized and rational. We start cleaning the jam on the door handle all the time. But it's almost like tonight. It's just about being fun and being carefree.
Exactly. Yeah, the jam is never removed from our door handles. It's there. So, yeah.
Long live door.
Long live the door. Yeah, the door will eventually fall off. Well, listen, Mike, thanks a million. It's been brilliant. And I'm going to ask Brian to bring back Prince, and we'll have a little kind of discussion with the three of us. It was supposed to be 5 of us, but 3 of us it is. So I have an interesting bit in just a minute, but let's just fire a couple of questions at both of you. So as regards poetry, we kind of chatted about this as poems being very accessible and sometimes a simple poem. But yeah, should they be accessible to everyone, or is there beauty in complexity? And why I ask this is I remember I loved poetry during my leaving cert, so kind of like the A-levels. And a lot of it was very complicated, and I loved getting into it and trying to understand what it was about. But most people would give up and just walk out of the room and go, no, this is so boring. I have no idea what's going on. So what do you think? Do you think everything should be accessible, or is there a beauty in complexity? Prince.
Okay. Yes, I think it should be accessible to everyone and anyone, because I believe we all share one thing in common, which is a human condition, right? We all go through hard times, we all go through challenges, we all go through good times and happiness. And like Mike said, healing through poetry is something that this year has really dawned on me. Like, it's become something that I really take to heart, and I see as kind of like a purpose with poetry. And I'll be doing a poetry workshop in April, and I want the title to be Healing Through Poetry, because I think poetry is something that can help, like, you, no matter where you come from, what you do. So I do think it should be accessible to everyone. And of course, there are going to be some poems where it's a bit complex and you have to try and get to grips with what the writer's saying. But poetry, in my opinion, I don't think should be something that I think it's something that has layers. Like Mike did a 4-line poem just then, right? And that poem is simple but so deep and complex in a sense that, it's like an onion, where maybe the older you get and as time goes on, you just peel back the layers and it means something new for you every time, and it just gets more and more important and more heavy in terms of its message. So it should be accessible to everyone, but then great poetry is complex in the fact that it's like that onion, it's got layers, and as time goes on, it blooms and develops. So yeah, that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, kind of like complex in simplicity. And Mike, do you have anything to add to what Prince has just said?
Yeah, I really echo everything that Prince has said there. And I think that there's a separation between the poetry you write for people and often who you are as a person yourself. That sure, poetry should be accessible for everybody, and the meanings and the enlightened aspects of poetry people should get what they get. But I think in the life of a poet, the complexities exist for him or her, because you're always in poetry, you're trying to pull opposites together. To me, all the time, it's whether it's sort of love or hate. It's always black or white, but it's always the sense of reconciling opposites, whether it's bringing things back into union, bringing healing to bear. And I think the poet carries the burden of this, and trying to sort of explain it or trying to capture it in ways that will make it accessible to people rather than existing out there. And I think that, and that's like what Oscar Wilde has said. And I'm not saying putting poets on a pedestal because it's a gift and you just have it, but he says that the burden of the poet is that they see the dawn first, and they have to make it real, and they have to make it accessible for the person in the street. And that's what I've always maybe strived to do in terms of the poetry. When I write a poem, I say, can the person who is least able to get this get it?
Yeah, no, really interesting, Mike. Yeah, it's incredible. It's taking something complex and bringing it to accessible. So you're both right. I just was remember, here's one type of poetry style for both of you, and I'm wondering what you think. This goes back to my leaving cert. The metaphysical poets, did they just go, what were they on about? Prince, do you remember them? Did you have them when you did A levels?
I can't say I know much about.
They were these mad guys, and you see, they're so old-fashioned, but I can't remember. I remember being totally obsessed with them. Mike, you might have been around doing your leaving cert. Do you remember the metaphysical poets?
I'm not sure.
Don't worry.
I have to cast my mind way back.
John Donne.
Metaphysicals, Donne or Keats. Yeah, there was an amazing saying by Don, and I know that because it becomes in the sort of synthesis of darkness and light. Uh, but all things, Don had a great.
Was it John
I,
Donne?
I'm all things re-begot of absence, darkness, death, things which are not. I always found that a great line because for light to emerge, darkness has to be there first.
That's true.
It's like someone asked Terry Pratchett once, says which got there first, darkness, which is the fastest, darkness or light? And he said, well, darkness is because it got there first.
Yeah.
And
Go on.
that's poetry is that sort of sense that we are human, and then something divine emerges. Like it's like the darkness gives way to light, and you just marvel at it, and you're inspired by it, and all you can do is just sit and admire as it flows.
And you brought something else into my mind. The Romantic poets, Prince, do you remember them? John Keats and all these guys. They were very inaccessible. I mean, he wrote Ode to a Grecian Urn, but it's all about, he was into this idea that you have to experience horrible things before you can appreciate the good stuff. And that's when Mike was talking there, I remembered that. And he had a horrendous life, but he took pleasure in it because then when something was nice, it was amazing for him. But we'll leave those. We'll park the Romantic poets and the metaphysical poets. And I have a little bit of fun for us. So Ryan, if you can bring up the poem. We have a poem that was a collaboration. And I am going to read it. Actually, no, I'm going to get one of you guys to read it. Prince, would you like to read that? And you can put a bit of the spoken word, how you do it.
Sure. Call me anything, label me, rename me, box me in letters stitched by strangers' tongues, but still I bloom. I rise through cracks in pavement, brushed by whispers, judged by glances, swaying between what they call me and what I know I am. A name is just an echo, a sound shaped by lips, a shadow cast by history. It does not hold my roots. It does not dim my fire. A rose by any other name would still burn crimson at dusk, would still perfume the wind, would still be exactly what it was always meant to be.
Thank you, Prince. Beautifully delivered. Can I ask Mike, what is your initial impression of that poem? Now, you're not, if it's absolutely horrendous or it sounds like it's a copy of another one, please feel free. No one's going to be upset. So what is your initial impression of the poem?
Well, my initial impression is and the initial image I get is the one of an anchor. It's something that doesn't change, or something that roots or allows a person to feel their roots or the sense of solidness. There's a Shakespeare poem that comes into my mind. Is the line was that love is not love that alters when it alteration finds. That there is something constant in life, and that when we discover that within ourselves, that there's nothing else can affect that or bring it. You just discover it as a constant. It's non-negotiable. It's concrete. It's there, and you can live by that one thing. A lot of people talk about this one thing that matters in life. And if you find it within yourself, then it has immense value and it gives you immense satisfaction. And it's like a well. You can continue to go back to it time and time again to just enjoy its constancy. That this is part of it, and it's almost like it's like the child within. The child doesn't need all the sort of the rational or take account of what people are saying or what the conditions that we're running out of money here. All the child wants to do is go out and play, And I think that once you discover that inner child, and in a way that you have discovered how to be carefree, and I think therein lies the secret of life. I don't think I have got there yet, but I sort of know it I know it at one level, but life is about discovering it at deeper levels until you. And I think that's why we get 75 years, give or take 5 or 10, to discover all this, the different levels where. And I don't think you can sort of wake up in the morning and be free, but you can wake up in the morning and see the signpost.
Yeah, and maybe understand the world a little bit better.
Yeah.
Can I ask Prince what you think about this poem? Does it speak to you? What does it mean to you? Because I think with every poetry, it means something different to everybody, different people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it reminds me of like how important it is to just drop the baggage of life sometimes, just you go through life collecting these things, these names, these titles, these professions, these garments, these, physical things, names, emotion. And sometimes you have to just let it all rest and just remember like what is constant, like Mike said, that constant that is always there, no matter how you're feeling, no matter what suit or outfit you have on, no matter what your name is. There's a constant that's always there, kind of almost like a divine that is unwavering, and I think this poem is beautiful in that it just points, like again, it signposts you to that divine. And every now and then we feel it, we feel it in certain moments. Like when you wake up in the morning and the sun is rising, for a moment, you connect with something natural. And it's as if you forget all your worries. Or when you hear a song that just takes you out of your daily routine, there's signposts that happen in life that kind of help us to drop that baggage. And I think this poem is definitely one of those. And I enjoy it. I enjoyed hearing it when you said it earlier and reading it again.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, Brian, you can remove the poem now so we can look at ourselves, and I'm going to reveal who the author is, and you're going to hate it. It's a collaboration with myself and my new best friend. My new best friend is ChatGPT. So what I said, but no, I gave it, so there's a little bit of me in there. I gave it the title. I love that. It's from, I think it's a speech by Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, and it's a rose by any other name. And I loved what you all got from it, because you were bringing it and paralleling it with life, and what Mike said, that coming to know yourself, and Prince, that being able to leave the baggage down and just be at one with life. I gave it that. I told it to modernize it. I said this is from Shakespeare. I gave it a bit of background. I said we're going to modernize a bit of Maya Angelou in there. So I was pretty impressed with what I came up with. I thought it was a really cool poem. So what do you think about artificial intelligence? I think it did pretty good, but I'd hate to think that our new W.B. Yeats, which is a famous poet in Ireland, could be an artificial intelligence. What do you think about, Prince, first of all, what do you think about artificial intelligence and writing poetry?
I think artificial intelligence is something that is here to stay. And I think for me anyways, when it comes to creation and art, do you feel what you're saying? Do you connect with what you're saying? You could have, a poet or an artist who has a computer create the art for you, and then you deliver it as if it was yours. And sure, you might fool people, you might make people believe in what it is, but you as a poet, you as an artist, like, do you really connect with this thing? And if you don't, and you're parading it like it's your art or your creation, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice, like you're doing yourself a disservice. We talk about healing through poetry, right? And no AI can help you connect, help you express, help you heal yourself, So I think it's a tool that has got some benefits. It can help you, with getting started with ideas. But at the end of the day, if you don't connect with what it is that you're creating, then for me, I don't see the point. But yeah, it definitely, I guess, we connected with that poem, and I think that's what is important here.
That's an amazing answer, Prince, because that's exactly it. The human connection is gone. Like, I could go there and say that I created this poem and have a career on stage, but then it's that connection with you, your poetry, and the connection with the audience. And Mike, any feelings that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I agree with everything Prince said. Is that human dimension that we that it can't access. You were asking earlier about how they celebrate. Did someone celebrate Anya? Maybe the World's Poetry Day, and I found that it wasn't in me to celebrate it, but it was almost like poetry celebrating through me in a way, because I came across one thing that I don't think AI would ever come up with. I have to sing at a funeral of a guy that lived at home tomorrow, and that's why it was in the air. The poetry was in the air today. But there's a line from The Parting Glass. It's an Irish song, and I don't think it would ever come up in AI. Would never come up with this. But it was a word of consolation for the woman whose husband had died, because in the poem, the person who wrote it is sort of talking about the leaving. It's the parting glass. It's the new journey, and the couplet was said, "But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not."
Very good. Yeah. No,
AI won't come up with that.
Now I have a question for you. So picture this. You're under major stress. You have a creative process going on in your personal life. You're doing a poem. You're totally embroiled in it. The outside world is calling. You're a poet in residence, and somebody calls you up and says, "I need a poem by tomorrow." Are you tempted to get up ChatGPT and give it a few things and create that poem? Are you absolutely committed to not using it at all? What do you think, Prince?
Yeah, again, I think it's the prompt. It's maybe getting started. Like it's a tool that you can use to get started with something. But I would never submit a poem that I didn't connect with. And I think that's where you need to be as an artist. Like that's where that comes from. That feeling of connection, of feeling like, because if imagine a scene where you create ChatGPT created something for you. You packaged it, sent it off. Now you have to perform this again and again and again and again, and you never connected with it anyways. Like that's such a painful, it sounds to me like torture, and I would never want to create or put something out in the world that I didn't connect with. So again, it's a tool that can help you brainstorm ideas, get started. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to make sure that you connect with whatever it is that you're creating. And if you don't, then I would say put it in the bin. Yeah.
Good man yourself. So there you are. Anybody who wants to hire Prince or as a poet in residence, he's a true man. And Mike, are you tempted to just submit that poem if you're under major pressure?
That's the challenge is great. I just love it. Poetry's not what I do. It's who I am. I don't have a choice in the matter. If a person asks me to write a poem about a certain thing, if it takes me 24 hours, it's like that's who I am. People say, "Are you a human being or a human doing?" I'm a human being, and poetry is who I am. A poet is who I am. It's more than what I do. And if I have to sit with that for 6 hours until it emerges, then that's what I don't have a choice. It's not something I can choose to either do or not do. It's something that I allow it to flow, and if it flows, so best. And whatever flows is what is meant to be. But I have to give it the space and the time and the silence to emerge.
No, that's brilliant. You're both true poets, not like me who'd be going, hang on a moment, I'll get that over to you now. So listen, we're running out of time, and I just wanted to thank the both of you. Also, to say Philip couldn't join us tonight. He was ill, so hopefully if we do this again, he will. And to thank Anya, who joined me earlier in the week to record the segment for the program. And both of you, it's been inspiring. I'm so glad that you didn't fall into the arms of our lovely AI. So thank you. Hopefully, I wish you all the best. Is there anything, just before we go, Mike, is there anything brewing for you in the future as regards poetry? Anything special?
Not really. I'm sort of tinkering with the whole idea of publishing some stuff. I've been writing since 1989, when I wrote my first poem, and I haven't really put it out there. And it's part of what people were saying is am I a poet at all? He's not, but that's the human sort of self-doubting aspect of I suppose of any endeavor, and I've written a lot of stuff, maybe over 1,000 poems and songs over the years, and I've released CDs, all right, of songs, but it would be a dream of mine to release a book of poems, even an audio book maybe, or something like that. So it'll happen.
Yes.
I get from the page to the stage.
Make it happen, Mike. Make it happen. You are, from the conversation, that you guys are true poets. And Prince, anything coming up for you that's kind of exciting as to do with poetry?
Yeah, so two main things. The first is April, I believe the 20th. I'm running the workshop, the poetry workshop, and that's exciting. And I'm definitely going to be in touch with you, Mike, because I really enjoy how you discuss around healing with poetry. And I want to create a workshop that really helps people see that poetry is not, you don't have to feel like you're a poet, or you don't have to feel like you need to be, special to express yourself. And I think that's what poetry is, expressing yourself, helping you through the hard times, helping you enjoy it and really appreciate the good times. And that's one thing I'm excited for. And I would like to, if it's okay with you guys, I've got a poem that I wrote for March, and then also it's going to be kind of like the intro to the workshop. So I'd like to just cite it now, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely, Prince. It's a night of poetry.
Yeah. So, World Poetry Day, a day to celebrate the way words make us feel and often help us heal. The wounds of the past, the scars that do last, the shadows we remember from January to December. Let your pen be your therapist, and let your flow be your medicine. Let your past inspire the present, to the future be a blessing. What a joy it is to be with Olga, Mike, and Brian Green, Philip and Anya, and all the viewing team. Let the light of words illuminate your being. The rhyme my needle, the meter my thread, the flow my pillow where I rest my head. Express your pain, express your joy, express your silence, express your noise, express the rain, express the stain, the ink that remains on your heart to this day. No matter the emotion I write, no matter the weather I write, no matter the matter I write, no matter I write. Expression is your express way to heal, to feel, to deal, to allow, to heal. So let's enjoy World Poetry Day, a day to celebrate the way words make us feel, and let us all begin to heal. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And what a fitting way to end our session. Thank you, Prince. And I'm in a poem. Hello. I'm famous. I just wanted to thank our audience. We had Elizabeth Jordan, and I love this comment you had, which was, I think, something from Mike was saying, the poetry holds up a mirror, beautiful words, and I have to concur with that. We have Femo who's joining us, and they are thanking us for the District 71, that's us, for organising insights from poets in the district. And we do have lots of sessions on Toastmasters Unplugged, looking at all different segments. And today it was lovely to celebrate with you guys World Poetry Day. We have Siobhan, who's been a host on the show, and she's love your poems, Mike. And she's listening in from Galway. And she made a nice comment here on your poem, Prince. She says, let your pen be your therapist. She loves that. So I'm going to thank you very much. I just want to thank a few people as well. Thank you to our poets. Thank you to Brian Green, who's been in our green room doing all the tech tonight. So lots of work backstage. He's probably exhausted. Hopefully got some inspired with some poetry. It was all pleasant for him. And I'm going to say good night. And our next session will be in April when we sit down with Dr. Shirley Gallagher and talk about sustainability, Toastmaster speaking and communication. And that will be hosted by Nigel Smith. So Brian, can you roll it there, Colette, and send us on our merry way?